power for the writer, it seems to me, lies in his ability to reveal if only a little bit more about the complexity of humanity. And in this country, I think it's very, very important for the writer to, no matter what the agony of his experience, he should stick to what he's doing.
Ralph Ellison was one of the most important authors during the post-war era. He wrote many famous works including Shadow and Act, a collection of political and social and critical essays, and Going to the Territory. But his most famous work was in the novel Invisible Man. This book was published in 1952 at the dawn of the Civil Rights Movement, and in the same year as the Brown v. Board of Education case. Invisible Man has many themes involving African American experience, like self-identification. Ralph Ellison made an everlasting impact on African American literature because he changed the way Americans view race and social thought through his surrealist and deep writing style. Ralph's parents, Ida and Lewis, were children of slaves and became part of an activist movement when they moved to Oklahoma. Ralph was born March 1st, 1914, in the segregated Oklahoma City. When Ralph was 3, his dad Lewis tragically died in a car accident, so his mother had to raise him alone. Ralph Ellison went to his local library a lot and read from authors such as Langston Hughes. In his early years, Ellison was classically trained in music, and as a jazz trumpeter, he was able to take an analytic approach to the arts. He joined some schoolmates who called themselves Renaissance men because their goal was to transcend racial barriers through the study of art and thought. Their goal of breaking racial barriers was very similar to what Louis Armstrong achieved in his work. Ellison even starts his most famous work, Invisible Man, with the main character listening to "Why Do I Always Have to Be So Black and Blue" by Louis Armstrong. So it's clear where he got his inspiration from. Ellison won a state scholarship to study music at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. He worked at a library, and that made it possible for him to read a lot of different material, like works from Ernest Hemingway. In Invisible Man, the main character also went to scholarship for college. He received a scholarship from the town, but more specifically from the rich white people. Ellison included this in the book because it reflected his own life experience, and how in Oklahoma City he wasn't treated as badly as when he moved to the Deep South for college. Ralph Ellison was more comfortable around whites until he left for college, just as the main character seemed to be in Invisible Man. For his senior year in college, Ellison traveled to New York, just like the main character in Invisible Man. Music was his primary source of expression, but he also got more into literature. While in New York, Ralph Ellison took many different jobs, trying to find his calling, and then he found it in writing. In 1937, Ellison started his literary career when Richard Wright asked him to write a book for a review in a newspaper. Ellison wrote short stories in 1944 called Flying Home and King of the Bingo Game, which were all about young black men's attempt to control their own destiny within a northern city. He showed the realities hidden beneath the white and the black world. Ellison was a cook in World War II and supplied troops with food in the Battle of the Bulge. When he returned, he came up with the idea for Invisible Man. Invisible Man is all about the main character's search for his identity and struggling with the feeling of invisibility due to being black in America. The book starts out with the main character in his room, and he talks about how he got there in the first place. During the beginning of the book, the main character realizes that he is invisible. As the book goes along, the prologue makes more and more sense. The book was published in 1952, shortly before the famous Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court case. The book Invisible Man won many awards when it came out, and it is still viewed as one of the most important books throughout African American literature and literature in general. His writings are filled with surrealist, dreamlike scenes that provide a view of the dark recesses of the human experience. After the book got voted the most distinguishable piece of work in the last 20 years, there was a fire at Ellison's home destroying 350 pages of his new work. This novel has caused great criticism because some felt that Ellison has played into the establishment's hands by putting the burden of equality upon the individual. Invisible Man seems to include people similar to Ellison's literary predecessors. For instance, Marcus Garvey, who is a black political activist who advocated for African Americans to redeem the continent of Africa and put an end to European colonialism. Garvey's message about going back to Africa can be seen in the book Invisible Man. The main character of Invisible Man has a commitment to the Constitution and a personal responsibility that can be seen in Frederick Douglass's work. Invisible Man became part of the growing civil rights movement and really affected the young college students in America. This is one reason why this book is given to high school students and college students. It is truly an eye-opening experience everyone should take part of. Ralph Ellison has made an important mark on African American literature with his work dealing with African American identity in American culture. Ralph Ellison's idea of African Americans feeling invisible continues today with mass incarceration. There's so many more black people in the United States prison system, and when they're released, they have an extremely hard time ever gaining traction in society. This is why Ralph Ellison's work is so important, because it's relevant today. No one should feel invisible.
Old empty bed, spring hard as lead, feel like old Ned, wish I was dead all my life through. I've been so black and blue.